Good morning, guys. I hope you're doing all right. It's rainy, kind of gross outside, 50 plus degrees. Great day to be inside. And so hopefully it warms up and clears out sometime soon. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Vietnam War, though, and in particular, what we're trying to get across when we teach about the Vietnam War is that in our society, when it comes to wars, we've got a dilemma. And the dilemma that we have is during wartime, we want to know what's going on with war. And in particular, when our founding fathers created the Constitution, they were nervous that if the president got the power to declare war without too many limitations, the president would be tempted to go into wars pretty casually. And so the way that our wars are set up is that we're supposed to have a president announce when they want to get into military conflict, they should be able to protect our country. But then shortly afterwards, Congress is supposed to actually officially declare war and then also check up on the president while he is waging war. Our problem, though, is our technologies have changed. In the time period you're studying, you're going to be noticing that we've got newspapers, we've got radio, we've got television. In today's world, we've got computers as well, and the internet too. And so for many presidents starting in the 1960s, many of them start getting really secretive about wars with the idea that if they talk to Congress or talk to the press, the secrets of our wars would then be out there for other countries to know about, which would put our soldiers into danger. What we're going to see with Lyndon Johnson, though, and Richard Nixon is that we're going to end up in a slippery slope into the Vietnam War. And for Americans, they're going to be told that the Vietnam War is going to be super easy to win, that the people in Vietnam are going to be really easy to conquer, that they really want the United States to be there. And this is painted as a war where we're going to save people from communism. The problem that we have, though, is in the Vietnam War, we have other elements. We've got Vietnamese people who are feeling nationalistic. We've got people in Vietnam who are nervous about having America or any other country come in and tell them how they have to live or how they should be living, especially for fear that perhaps the United States might be there to make this area into a colony. There is also concerns that in the Vietnam War, we have new tactics that are being used. So when you study the Vietnam War, you're seeing a civil war take place in Vietnam between North and South Vietnam. And when America goes in, it's going to be really hard to tell who is who. We're also going to discover that the person that we're supporting in South Vietnam is a dictator in his own right. He's just somebody who likes the United States and isn't communist. So the Vietnam War is very complicated, but the mistake that Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon are going to make is they're going to keep the war simple for Americans, not really explain how difficult the war is going to be. And when Americans start realizing what's going on with the war, they're going to come to the realization that they have been told stories by the Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon presidencies that are not true. It's going to create something known as a credibility gap. And so if you've noticed that inside of our country, we've got people who will believe that there was a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy that's different than the official story, or if there are people who argue that we never did the moon landing because they claim that there's a conspiracy theory around that. If you have people in your life who are suspicious of anything the government does for fear that they might not be telling the truth, part of the reason why they're doing that is we've got examples from the 1960s of Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon not telling the truth about what was actually going on in Vietnam. And what they were gambling on is that the war would be easy enough for us to win, that even if they weren't telling the truth completely, once we had a victory, things would then be forgiven. And instead, what happened is in the Vietnam War, we had a decade of fighting, and we end up losing the conflict. We end up tearing the country apart, which you read about in chapter 26, lesson 2. And you'll be seeing the elements for why that's taking place. You're going to hear what Lyndon Johnson is saying is going on, and then you'll see what's actually happening on the ground that's going to make the Vietnam War really tricky and complicated. Even nowadays, there are Americans who have very simple solutions for the Vietnam War. They'll either say that we shouldn't have gotten in, ignoring the fact that Ho Chi Minh was a dictator. He was spreading communism. They did live underneath a horrible system for the past few decades. Or there'll be people who will argue we should have fought harder, even though at the height of the war, we're going to have half a million people in Vietnam fighting against the North Vietnamese. We're going to spend millions of dollars a day. And that fighting was not bringing us very close to actually winning the war, not just to militarily win, but also win the hearts and minds of the people. And so we're going to find that for Vietnam, we've got a legacy that's going on with Vietnam that still lives with us nowadays. Because if you have listened recently, we have had people on the national level saying that we should send our military into places like North Korea, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, places in Africa, as if it was casual and easy. And the big lesson from Vietnam is any military engagements like those things are complicated, they are costly, and they can become really difficult for us to win because of the lessons that we should be learning from the Vietnam conflict. So, what you're doing today, you've gotten your text assignments done well enough to understand that there are protests happening here in America. You're going to be taking a look at the next portion of your America in the 20th Century video. And so, what you've got linked for you on your Google Sheet for today, there is an ed puzzle of about 20 minutes that goes along with your video worksheet. And I have pegged it. So, I've got listed for you what questions are coming up at what time. And like I've done in the past, if you have any questions, you can throw them into the chat. Like you can see Alex has posted over here the question of, are we finishing the whole worksheet today? We have been told by the district to give you guys about 20 minutes worth of work on a daily basis because they are finding that some kids, especially on my AP Bio kids who are ramping up for their test in 2.5 weeks, we don't want to overload you. And so what'll happen is you'll see segment 2 today to take a look at what happened with JFK and Lyndon Johnson bringing us into the war. Tomorrow we'll discuss that stuff, and then we'll be able to wrap up the Vietnam War for the rest of the week. As you are working your way through the video worksheet, make sure you watch the ed puzzle all the way to the 100% watched mark so you get credit for today. Make sure you take your attendance. Oh, shoot, I'm not doing my presentation, so let me present like this instead. Sorry about that. So let me try again. You've got here your links for today. Link into the ed puzzle for today. Watch it all the way to the 100% mark so I can see that you've watched the video that you're supposed to. You'll be completing your video worksheet down to question number 18, taking a look at what's happening with the people in Vietnam as Lyndon Johnson keeps escalating the war further. Please also mark your attendance for today so that you guys are taken care of with that work. And please bring to me any questions that you guys are having with the Vietnam conflict, because this can be kind of complicated and confusing. And we want to make sure that it's not that for you guys as you're working your way through. So I'll be checking your posts throughout the course of the day if you send me emails or whatever. And then we'll be finishing this up later on this week as we finish the Vietnam War and chapter 26 as we work our way through tomorrow and the next day. And then, like you guys have heard, Friday and Monday, nothing will be assigned because those days are supposed to be spent with us as teachers trying to figure out what the rest of the year is going to look like for you guys as we wrap up the rest of the course, since we are going to be staying at home for the rest of the time together. If you have questions then, let me know. But at this point, if you're feeling good, you guys can dip out and get to work on the stuff that you're supposed to be working on. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Alex, you'll be stopping with question number 18, and it'll be prompting you with that throughout the course of the video.